Hello everyone, welcome back to another week. So this week I wanted to do a quick broad brushstrokes overview of all the other George V keyplate issues other than the Imperium design that I showed you last week. Quite surprisingly, it turned out there were many fewer colonies that used the Imperium design than I had thought. I was under the impression, even as a 40 plus year philatelist, that the number had to be higher than 20, but it turns out it wasn't. And in fact, most of the designs used were specific to each colony, with some colonies maybe sharing, like 2 or 3 colonies sharing a design, but most having their own. And I got to thinking a little bit about why that might be. And the conclusion I came to was that it had to do with how much money and commerce and demand there was for stamps in the colonies. So colonies that had rich economies, lots of demand for stamps, lots of revenue use, had the revenue available to commission their own design from De La Rue. Whereas other colonies that had smaller populations, less commerce, less revenue use, would order the Imperium design or a standard design because it would be cheaper than having their own made up. So without any further ado, I've got images, representative images of most all of the key plates that were in use during this period. There's a couple of colonies I don't have. I don't have the Tiger definitives of the Federated Malay States because I just didn't have any to show you. But I think you'll find that I have everything else, at least representative pictures. And it's an interesting little walk through the various stamps of the empire from this time. So I'm going to turn my camera around and show you. Okay, there we go. So just take it, I'll take it off the tripod and just bring it up. So here we have the Bahamas key plate design, and this design was specific to Bahamas, and it was introduced during Edward VII, and it was replaced in the George VI period. Okay, here we've got the profile head issues of Great Britain with the Bechuanaland overprints. So Great Britain had 2 sets of this design, 2 different watermarks. And some of the colonies like Bechuanaland, Morocco agencies, and Ireland, notably, initially used these stamps with overprints. So they form an interesting study on their own. Lots of shades in these issues. Okay, then British Guiana had a badge design, and this was 2 watermarks, multiple crown and script CA. It was only used by British Guiana. Okay, then Bermuda. So there was 1 commemorative issue for the tercentenary of legislative institutions, and then the popular keyplate, high value keyplate design that a lot of George VI collectors love for Bermuda, but it was also used by Nyasaland, Leeward Islands, and a couple of other colonies for their high values. Okay, Barbados. This badge colony design with Queen Victoria, interestingly here, and George V and the sugarcane. That was a short-lived set that was only multiple crown CA, and it was replaced very shortly after. It was not used for any other colony. Okay, now Cyprus, this is interesting. So this design here was the old Imperium keyplate design during Queen Victoria's reign, when you had dies A and B. And then Cyprus used it on Edward VII and terminated this design in the George V period, replacing it with the design on the right over here. And again, Cyprus, to the best of my knowledge, is the only colony that had this design in George V's reign. So that's and it was this was both watermarks, both multiple crown and script CA, and then this set is only script. Okay, then we have straight settlements, which was part of Malaya. I apologize for the lack of focus here, but still this should work for our purposes. So this design with the palm trees, this was unique to straight settlements. It wasn't used for any other colony. It was first introduced with Edward VII's reign, and it was discontinued for late George V. And again, both watermarks are found in this design. Okay, so then we've got, this is the first of one of the designs that was used by a few of the colonies. British Honduras, where we had this one with the flowers around the portrait. So British Solomon Islands, Grenada, I think St. Lucia had this design. This design here with the oval and the arch lettering and the ornaments. Jamaica, British Honduras, I think Nyasaland, and a couple of others used it. And usually it's found with both watermarks. Okay, now this design here is another one that is a form of, well, it's not an Imperium key plate, but it's one design that was used by a few colonies. Gambia, Seychelles, St. Helena had these stamps. And there's a number of popular plate varieties like the dented frame up here and damaged S in postage and split A in postage. So that's an interesting set, usually found in both watermarks. Dominica. Okay, so Dominica was unique. Again, these designs were not used anywhere else. The Rosau Views issue is started in the Edward VII period. Then you had the badge and key plate issue over here, and the war tax overprints. Gibraltar was another colony that had its own designs. These ones here started in the Edward VII period and continued into George V, again with both watermarks. KUT. So Kenya had, Kenya, Uganda, Tanganyika had this palm tree design here, and this 10-cent stamp with the lion. This was part of the engraved set. This was the only value to be printed as a key plate. And this continued into George VI's reign with the pound. These were discontinued quite shortly after they were issued. But I think, if I remember correctly, both watermarks are found on this one. Okay, now we move over to Ireland. So the Ireland set, the pictorial issue with the Sword of Light, the arms, the map of air, and the Celtic cross, which is not here. This is a very long-running set that actually straddles George V, George VI, and early Elizabeth. Tons and tons and tons of paper varieties in the second watermark, which was the George VI period. But for the George V period, there was just the simple monogram watermark of which these values come from. And there's still lots of shades and things to collect on this. Very interesting set. Okay, then Hong Kong. Hong Kong had its own designs, and with the flowers in below the portrait. This was a design introduced during Edward VII's reign, and it ran all the way through George V for both watermarks. And it's a very nice set. Okay, Montserrat. So badge of the colony design, fairly similar to St. Kitts Nevis, found in both watermarks. Okay, Mauritius, the arms definitives. These started in Edward VII's reign and were continued into George V. Again, found in both watermarks, I believe. Malta. So Malta had two keyplate sets. The first one on the right over here, and then the second one, this coat of arms with George V. And it's found with postage at the bottom and postage and revenue, as well as postage with the postage and revenue overprint. And I believe these are all script CA, but this is block CA, and I think some script as well. Okay, St. Kitts Nevis had the Columbus design here, and the Columbus incorporated into the rectangular format. I believe these are found both script and block CA. Okay, then we've got St. Helena. So this design was used by Ascension and St. Helena. And it's a very popular set because of the plate flaws that can be collected here, where the ship has a broken mainmast, there's a torn flag on the ship, and there's cleft rock on the cliff over here. And now actually I see in Gibbons this year they've got a storm above the rock, which is a break above here. There's also a damage value tablet on the halfpenny, which I actually have in this auction. And they're very popular with collectors. Okay, then we've got Palestine. So Palestine is another interesting area. We have the initial design here for the Egyptian Expeditionary Force. That's found with the simple cipher and block and script CA watermarks. So kind of a hybrid of the Great Britain watermarks and the colonial ones. Then you get those with the Palestine overprints, so in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. And there's a number of different settings of that overprint. There's Jerusalem and London settings, and it's quite complicated. And then you get the pictorial issue, which is issued in 1927. And so it straddles the George V and George VI reigns. And they're distinguished by paper type. Okay, Southern Nigeria. So Southern Nigeria had this keyplate design here, which started in, I believe, in Edward VII. And it continued on until Southern Nigeria became part of Nigeria. So there's a very brief George V set that has really no listed varieties or shades, even though I have managed to find a few. South Africa. So South Africa started out with the George V keyplates to the left, which were bilingual. And then starting in 1927, or 26 rather, the stamps are alternately English and Afrikaans in the sheet. So you can see that here, South Africa and Swede Africa. And collectors almost always collect these as pairs. But you see a lot of singles as well. So most of these issues were reissued in photogravure, but the very first printings of the halfpenny and the 1 penny and the 6 penny are actually surface printed keyplates. And so they form part of this group. Sarawak. So these are Sir Charles Viner Brooke, who was the... He was kind of like a viceroy. There was a family dynasty that controlled Sarawak, the Viner Brooke family, until it became an actual colony. So the stamps feature his portrait. And those are found unwatermarked and with a multiple rosette watermark. Okay, then we've got the common design postage dues. So a number of the colonies had postage dues of this design, which just had a circular medallion and the colony name and postage due in a frame. These were first introduced, the earliest ones were Grenada, I think, during Queen Victoria's time, but they were continued all the way into the Elizabethan period. But these ones are the George V ones, watermark script CA on ordinary paper. Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago had this Britannia design at first. keyplate, and then it was incorporated into a colonial badge type design with George V. And I believe the Britannia design is multiple crown CA only, and the badge design is both multiple crown and script CA, predominantly script. And then finally we get, I think this is the last slide, we get Sudan, which is the Arab postman on a camel. So this design was first introduced in 1898, and these are the watermark. Well, there's actually two watermarks during George V's time, the crescent and star, and the SG watermark. And the SG watermark is what most of these are. An interesting set, lots of shades, lots of plate flaws, none of them listed in Gibbons. So it's a very fertile area actually to sink your teeth into. The stamps aren't very expensive, and there's lots, you can collect them just like the Bermuda key plates, but for a fraction of the price. So there you have it. There's a quick overview of the key plate designs. Like with the Imperium key plates, there are rarities in the form of inverted and sideways watermarks on some stamps, all extremely rare. Generally speaking, if you see them in Gibbons for 300 or 400 pounds, it means that there was probably only a sheet or two ever discovered. So, in most instances, these stamps, there's fewer than 200 or 300 known in most cases. Lots of shades, lots of colored papers. All the varieties I talk about in my Imperium key plates video applies to these also. And you can any one of these areas can form the basis of a very long-term specialization. There's a few of the more brief sets that you probably couldn't occupy you for too long, but many of these were used over a 10 or 15 year period, and there's lots and lots to collect. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have fun. Bye.